You ready?
Yeah.
I'm going to do my little introduction, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
Let me pray real fast. Welcome back to another episode of Breaking Quiet. I'm your host, Marybeth Hill. I'm a person in long-term recovery, but I'm also somebody who has successfully reintegrated society after incarceration. Take two. Don't laugh at me. It happens sometimes. All right, you ready? Welcome back to another episode of Breaking Quiet. I'm your host, Marybeth Hill. I'm a person in long-term recovery, but I'm also a person who has successfully reintegrated society after incarceration. Breaking Quiet is a podcast created for women, by women, a place where we can lift our voices and tell our stories. I am so super excited today to have Teela on the show. I have had the honor and the privilege of watching Teela's journey from the jump, from the very first time she came into recovery and into the woman that she is today. Teela has faced some of the biggest struggles I've ever seen anybody in recovery face, and she has done it with absolute grace. So with no further ado, Teela, how are you today, Teela?
I'm doing absolutely fabulous.
I'm
Thanks.
so excited to have you on the podcast today. So just so the listeners know, we use Breaking Quiet as a platform for women. You know, so many different times in the recovery and reentry space, women do not have the same voice. We're not given the same opportunity to really share, you know, our recovery and what that looks like. And so I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you. I agree with that. And a lot of that stigma comes from the pressure that is put on us from society as mothers and that shame and guilt that comes with that if you do find yourself in active addiction as a mother. And that was my biggest struggle there. Actually walked out of rehab 3 years ago today. That was my...
And it was your birthday yesterday.
Yeah.
So happy belated birthday.
you.
I told you happy birthday yesterday, but you guys wish Teela a super happy birthday. Her birthday was yesterday. So, you know, one of the things I love to talk about on the podcast, and not just the podcast, but anywhere that I travel and, you know, I'm able and I have the opportunity to speak to so many different genres of people is, you know, really we hear this all the time about the gateway drug, and you know, and I hate that saying. I hate that saying with a passion because the gateway drug is not even really a drug. We talk about trauma.
Yes.
You know, nobody likes to talk about trauma, and those are the ugly things that happen in our lives that lead us to the place where we started using drugs and alcohol as a coping mechanism. Right. So, kind of tell me a little bit about what life looked like for Teela, like in your early childhood.
Early childhood. There was some early identity issues. My mom and my biological father, they weren't legally married. It was a very toxic relationship. My mom struggled with her own demons and everything, didn't know how to really parent at that time. It was the 90s, of course.
Yeah.
But so from an early age, I was separated from my biological father, and I was raised by my stepdad. As kind of a single child between those two until they had my younger siblings. In school, when I was registered to go to school, my last name they would put his last name, my stepdad's, and that's what my name was all through school. But I would notice that my little permanent records, like my report card and stuff, would always say Bell, which was my maiden name, and that kind of messed with me a little bit as a kid. You know, like, well, what is my last name? Then my younger siblings were born, and of course there's that, you know, I knew that my stepdad was not my real dad, of course. My mom didn't hide that from me. But there was that that separation, or that I almost feeling left out because those were their biological kids together, you know. And then, of course, there was always every time I started acting up, it was, well, that's that Belle coming out in her, you know, always, you know, demonizing my real dad. Which, of course, my real dad was, you know, off doing his thing. He was an addict long before I was born. So there was that kind of identity issue, you know. I lied a lot. teenager things.
That's one of the things that and that's such a real topic, right? Because, let's keep it real. My kids they are my children, but they each have a different dad.
Yeah.
And with that comes different last names.
Yeah.
And then, my daughter, she was eventually adopted out by my parents whenever I was actually incarcerated in 2019. And that is such a real thing. Like, people don't ever stop to think about something, that might seem insignificant to so many people who are normies, right?
Yeah.
But how much that can have an impact on a child at an early age.
Yeah.
I watch them struggle, with wanting to like be around their real dad, or, wanting to know, like with my daughter, like why was she adopted, but, her brothers weren't.
Right.
And so, we have to really look at that, like how impactful, especially as children, that those small things to somebody really are a mountain, to them. Yeah. So tell me about that. You started acting up in high school.
Yeah, and just the rebel thing, or the rebelling thing. I did actually start a self-harm when I was 14. It was one of those, I was going through my little punk rock stage, and my best friend at the time, her dad was actually a drug dealer. And, it wasn't any of the hard stuff, you know what I mean? And that's when I started smoking marijuana, was with her. And my parents weren't paying attention to me. My mom had just been diagnosed with manic depressive bipolar. So she stayed pretty much locked up in her room. She didn't know mental health in the early 2000s is nowhere what it is now. So she was getting what the little help that was available at the time and trying to figure out medications. So, there were days where mom wouldn't come out of the bedroom, and there were days when she did, she was throwing dishes at everybody or locking us out of the house, for smarting off or something like that. So, I did self-harm there for a little bit. Teacher saw it, called child services, and at that point, my mom had enough of my shenanigans. So I went to live with my grandma just for a short period of time as my family moved from Kentucky to Arkansas, where most of my family was anyway. It was almost like she was like running from it. She did not do well with DHS workers, but her argument was she's never had us taken away. So, because she was in active addiction on pain meds, but they're legal. That was legal, prescribed to her. And that was, that epidemic, that opioid epidemic starting. I don't know what exactly she was taking, but it was a lot.
Yeah. I remember, in those early, in Arkansas, let's keep it real. Arkansas is still really behind. Whenever you look at the national statistics, we are still so behind when it comes to mental health resources. So because Arkansas is such a rural area, there are so many underserved regions in the state of Arkansas where there's not even a mental health clinic. There's not even a substance abuse clinic within 100 miles some places.
Yeah.
I talk about that a lot in my own story, how we stigmatize mental health and addiction so bad, especially in the early 90s, all the way through the early 2000s. Like, it was one of those things, especially amongst families, like we didn't talk about it. Nobody wanted to say the words that they were actually feeling, like, I'm sad.
Right.
I need help.
Right.
Because it just comes out in anger. Like, that's it. A lot, my parents were not addicts, but that is a lot of my story too. A lot of untreated mental health, and nobody wanted to say, like, hey, I need some help. Like, what I'm doing is not working.
Yeah. It was a lot. And seeing in my early childhood, when you take away those little things, we were the family that looks good on paper. I was told many times, hey, we have an image we have to uphold as a family. My stepdad, he was a quality engineer for Toyota Motors. So he would do Japan business trips, Canada business trips, and we had a nice house and looks good on paper in a subdivision, cul-de-sac, typical middle class.
Yeah.
We did not struggle for food. We didn't struggle to keep the lights on. But at the same time, when you walk inside of that house, that big, fancy, nice house, nothing was clean. There's everything. The toddlers were allowed to, pretty much draw on the walls, mess up the house. And it was my mom, her mental health, like she just couldn't. And as an adult, I kind of understand that now a little bit more. But back then, I was just like, man, you're lazy.
Yeah.
That's not teenagers. We're self-centered and stuff when we're teenagers. So
Right.
it was like, man, you're lazy. Why don't you get up and clean house? Why don't you get up and cook? And I'm not understanding that she could, like, physically, it couldn't. Now, I understand that more. But whenever it was those early high school years, like that was kind of like what kind of defined my childhood. But then, when we get to like the trauma, like that was the trauma that was my gateway drug was my mom dying. And
How old were you when your mom passed?
I was 16. It was, that was really traumatic when I look back on it because I found out at school. My brother called the school. They said, hey, she's got a phone call up here at the office. And the first words out of his mouth was, hey, mom died. What? What?
If you don't mind me asking, Teela, how did your mom pass away?
Her death certificate says, heart attack, myocardial malfunction, a heart attack. A doctor later on explained to me my mom had a complete, total knee replacement in her early 30s. And they believe it was a blood clot that probably caused it. She was not active. She was overweight. She didn't eat right, smoked, all of that.
Yeah.
So, and she was 37 when she died.
God, that's crazy. And this is the one thing that I have learned, like watching my own children and their love for me, right? Like it never mattered how much of a horrible person that I was, like in their eyes, right? Like I was still their mother. And the same goes for you, like it didn't matter, that she didn't clean the house, that, the house was unkept or that she was yelling. She was still your mom,
Yeah.
and I'm very thankful that I still have my mom. My dad has passed away, but the bond that we as children naturally form, for the most part, like we form with our mother is something that is hard to deal with.
Yeah.
So you lose your mom at 16.
And it's something I look back on and I don't say it with shame anymore because it is part of my story, but I was not put in grief counseling or anything at all. The day of my mom's funeral, less than an hour after putting her in the ground, I was on the sandbar drunk.
Yeah.
With my brother or friends, and I was self-medicating.
Absolutely, because that's all we know how to do, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're kids. And so that's the one thing that as I move into this work, I work in a lot of the recovery space and the reentry space, and those things are really important. But I tell people all the time, like, we have to stop and look at prevention,
Right.
right? Like that, and everybody I've ever interviewed so far and up until this point, and people that I know in general, like, for the majority of it, our addiction started as kids, whenever we're in those vulnerable moments as a child, right? Like we don't know what the words depression mean. We don't know what the word grief is. Like we use these things as adults, especially adults in recovery, because we hear these things, as we go through treatment, as we go through 12-step fellowship meetings, as we work with sponsors and stuff like that. We start to learn and be able to identify what those words are.
Yeah.
But as a kid, all you know is that you're sad, you're angry, and we even have problems identifying feelings as kids, So that's why I look at the landscape in Arkansas and I'm like, man, where's the prevention at? Like, where is the prevention for these kids? And then you think like, well, my kid doesn't need prevention. They grow up in a nice home. But just like you said, and that's something that we have to understand is that addiction does not discriminate.
Mm-mm.
It does not care if you come from the trailer park with the parents who are addicts. It does not care if your family member is a politician.
Right.
It does not care if, your dad is working for a national corporation, your stepdad, and he's traveling to these multiple countries.
Yeah.
Addiction doesn't care about that. And trauma doesn't stop at the door just because you have a stature on, a social or economic level,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was it was a lot. And I remember, my stepdad just kind of, moving through the motions and everything. And because now here he is with, these three small kids and his teenager and stuff. And of course, me, in my head, it was, okay, well, I don't have anybody, authority. I don't have to answer to anybody. And, about a year after my mom passed, me and my stepdad, we got into an argument. And then I looked him in his face. I said, "You are not my dad. You can't tell me what to do. I'm out of here." So, and then at 17, I left home.
Yeah.
And that was when I started getting in trouble. 17 years old, I'd reached back out to my dad's side of the family, my biological father's side of the family, got back into contact with, my sister, my brother, and saw my dad for a little bit there, but then kind of fell off on him. But it was at 17 that I tried meth for the first time. And it was, I laugh so hard now, and it's not a funny situation.
Yeah,
I laugh because
No, we have to laugh, right? Like, people look at me all the time and they're like, and then people probably think I'm crazy because like I will literally laugh at some of the traumatic things in my life as a kid, and you have to kind of laugh at yourself. You know what I mean? You have to find humor in the situation because if we sat here and we thought about everything that we have been through, it could take you down. So like we have that's like our little superhuman power. I always tell people they're my spicy memories.
Yeah.
So we kind of laugh at our spicy memories.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like the first time somebody offered me, the meth and everything. You want to try some of this? I was all like, "Oh, my dare pledge. No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good." I remember my dare pledge. And I was like, "You know what? I'm good. I'm good." And then I sat there for a second and I said, "You know what? Why not?" And then I said, "Well, yeah, okay, I'll try that." And I couldn't tell you what that stuff looked like. I couldn't. I could tell you what was in it because of the ingredient posters in the
Right.
school, but I couldn't tell you what it looked like. I never saw how anybody did it. I didn't know anything about it. But the first time I ever saw anybody use it in front of me, and this may be a trigger warning for anybody out there, but I saw them shoot it through their neck. And that should have been like you say that to a normal person or
Right.
anybody else, it's like, "Oh, wow, like my goodness," and stuff. I was going, "That is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. What is wrong with me? Like, what?" That should have been, but no, I was kind of like, "Dang, that's pretty cool." Of course, I didn't pick up a syringe or anything till way later on, but I mean, there was another red flag. Like, I should not have thought that was cool.
Yeah, people don't realize this though, so this is something I always talk about too is how us as addicts, especially if it's a generational thing, right? Like your mom was an addict before your biological dad was an addict. So you already predispositioned before you ever even knew it,
Yeah.
right? To become an addict. And even in the process of like you self-harming, that's addictive behavior.
Yeah.
Anything that we can use to change the way we feel. Like that, when you look at the definition of what addiction is, because addiction is not drugs and alcohol, it could be men, it could be women, it could be gambling, it could be sex, shopping, self-harm, even our eating habits, right? Like anything that we can change, the physical way that we feel, that's addiction.
Yeah. And it was crazy for me. But that's when I kind of took off there for a little bit. I was a junior in high school. I was working my first job, and I remember that first night that I got high and sat in front of a computer screen the whole night playing solitaire. I went into work, and I asked my coworkers, I was like, "Do y'all look okay?" and stuff. And she said, it was the craziest thing. She said, "You look like you've been up all night doing meth." And I was like, this was just a coworker. I didn't text her outside of, or anything. I was like, "Whoa, oh, what? No, I didn't sleep well last night and stuff." And she's like, "Okay," laughing. She was joking, but I was like, "What?" But that was my takeoff. It wasn't long after that I quit basketball that I'd played for 10 plus years. I was falling asleep, falling out of my chair in the cafeteria, just blacking out, passing out. And then that was after that I left home. And then I got in a lot of trouble. I stole my grandma's checkbook, and went and wrote a bunch of hot checks and drained her account. And when I got caught, to keep me from being charged with, I think it was 9 or 10 felonies, because I drained her account and then wrote hot checks, and plus it was stolen. The woman, bless her soul, like, she didn't choose to press charges. She told them to stick me in the court system, and she took a loan out to repay the bank and stuff, and never told me I had to pay that back.
Isn't that crazy? I think about that's not part of my story, right? Like, I never really stole from my parents or anything like that, but it is part of so many different people's stories, and how the love, from certain family members, their want to not let us fall flat on our face,
Right.
inevitably really enabled us, to keep doing what we were doing.
Yeah. The beginning of my senior year, I was put in the FINS petition. And that alone was just...
What is that?
It was like the Family and Needs Services. It's like the court system
Gotcha.
that they stick juveniles in whenever they get a record or they're on drugs and stuff. And they put me in that, and I lived with my aunt and uncle my senior year. And that was very an uncomfortable time, because I was getting pulled out of class randomly to do drug tests. I had a probation officer that would come up there and check on me. I had to leave basketball practice early on certain days to go do outpatient rehab that obviously didn't stick. But it was, I was already at a new school, or I was at a new school my senior year, and was the black sheep already, because, wow, why do you have a probation officer,
Yeah.
And it was a small town, small school. My brother graduated from that school, so everybody knew everybody, and your family history. So senior year was kind of tough. I was kind of secluded, but I was clean that year. I didn't pick anything else up. I got off the court system and graduated pregnant with my son, my oldest son.
Your senior year.
Yeah. Me and his dad, we got married about a month after graduation, and I basically reverted. That's what I always think. It's like I grew up so fast in those next few years that by 2017, which was my downfall, I completely went all the way backwards.
Yeah.
I had, when I got pregnant with my son, I didn't do anything while I was pregnant. Didn't smoke cigarettes, nothing. We moved into our apartment. Then my second son was born. We had our house doing what you're supposed to do. We were going to work. That's when I got my dental assisting license. We paid our bills, and then my third son was born. And that was in 2013. And at that point, I was exhausted. I was mentally, physically, emotionally exhausted. I was a stay-at-home mom for a little bit, and there was a lot of kids. There was 3 boys, okay?
Yeah.
And there was a lot going on. I was really self-conscious about my weight at the time, and I needed some energy to clean the house.
And, it's crazy because that's where we are very similar in that too. Because I did myself had a little bit of clean time when I had my first kid. And for people who are normal, they're like, I don't understand why you would go back, to using drugs. And I tell people, I'm like, because there's a very big difference in being clean and being abstinent from drugs and then being in recovery.
Yeah.
Right? Like, for us who are actually addicts, like who will tear our whole lives down. And I know I did. I know, from what I know about you, you did the same thing, right? Like, we will completely tear our lives apart, behind drugs and alcohol. And really, it's just because we don't know how to deal with our emotions.
Right.
But, they always ask me that question, like, why would you go back? Because that's all I knew, And granted, yes, I lived that life, abstinent for all those years. And there were great times, right? Like, I can look back in those moments, and there were some happy times in there, when my kid was born. But there was a lot of stuff that, once again, with unregulated mental health, I didn't know how to properly channel that.
Right. So
you had your third baby.
Yeah. And then I I guess I relapsed again. And again, like you were saying, I was just abstinent. I
Right.
wasn't practicing any type of recovery. I didn't know what AA or NA was at the time. But I relapsed and started using meth again. This time I was, using to clean the house or play with the kids or just have more energy and stuff like that. And at that time, I didn't see how that short little 6-month span there spiraled out of control to then I started neglecting things.
Yeah.
Well, then DHS showed up at my door and for the first time. And that was a feeling of, I don't know, I just felt dirty after that. I failed the drug test they gave me. There was just reports of, smoking marijuana, kids running around outside, stuff like that. DHS came in. I failed that drug test. I was removed from the home because their dad, he didn't do anything. He's normal.
Yeah.
Their dad was normal. He didn't even know I was on anything. He oblivious to it. He just was going to work and was like, what in the world? So, of course, because he was clean and everything, I was just removed from the home. And I was 34 days with no contact. I couldn't see, touch, or even talk to my children, my babies. And that absolutely ripped me apart, the shame and guilt that came with that and the just filthy feeling because I judged back then. I was on my high horse to, the people that had DHS in and out of their lives and
Yeah.
couldn't get clean and the kids taken away and stuff. And I was like, well, here I am. What happened to me?
Yeah. We lacked humility, right?
Yeah.
Like, once again, we don't know these things until we get in recovery, because I did the same thing. I used to
Right.
think, I could quit doing drugs. Like, what's wrong with those people?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had zero humility for the fact that at any given time, I was just one wrong decision away from
Yeah.
being right back where I started.
Right. But I had to do parenting classes, another outpatient rehab, and a couple of other things. I remember I did everything like they said to a T. I jumped through every hoop they threw at me, everything, to the point that when we went to court 6 months later, the attorney for DHS was like, we want to thank the mother for cooperating and are actually asking to close this case early because she's done everything she's supposed to do. So it was closed 6 months early. And life went on. I wasn't, because I was still, they were still able to kind of drop in for up to a year after that. I didn't smoke marijuana, I didn't do anything, but I started drinking at that time. And here I am again. I didn't realize I was just trading one for another.
Absolutely.
I was finding something instead of addressing, that trauma that was still there. I carried rage about my mom dying. That was just rage. That's the only feeling I can describe. It was rage. I spent years being mad at the woman just for, teenager stuff, back and forth. And then she dies on me and I'm just mad. Like, how dare you? How dare
Absolutely.
you leave me like this? And so, I carried rage. And I started drinking. Realized real quickly I didn't really like that a whole lot. I couldn't. I'm not a heavy drinker. Couldn't handle the sick feeling, all that. So I stopped. I stopped drinking. Then I went back to smoking marijuana daily, and I was going to work full time. Their dad was going to work full time. We were buying our home. We were buying our cars. We made it up to like the middle class where tax season was no longer fun for us.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, what? So in my eyes, I was like, that's what you're supposed to do as grown-ups. You're supposed to move up and be, happy to be those things. Well, there I am burying myself in the bathroom or like locking myself up in my bathroom every night after dealing with kids, work, everything all day and, smoking myself silly and going to bed. Kids didn't want for anything. We had, the nice stuff. They wore nice clothes. I had my scrubs, matching shoes, all of the stuff, material things that I thought mattered. Again, here I am with my own life, my own family, where it looks good on paper, but once you go inside the house, mom's not right.
Yeah.
There's something wrong. 2017, that's when I had to I was humbled big time. I filed for divorce from my kid's dad after 7 years of marriage. It was just, it was me. Like, that was a me thing. He was, of course, that we could have worked on issues or whatever, but I was so gone. Like, I'd already had, I can't do this anymore. And it was because I had had an old person walk back into my life. And that was my fairy tale. We were together when I was a teenager, and that was my fairy tale love story that was ripped from me as a teenager. He broke my heart, okay? He broke my heart when I was 17, and I never got over it. Well, then here he comes back into my life, and I'm thinking, oh, this is my chance and everything. So me and the boy's dad, we split up, and then it wasn't a month or two, and, new boyfriend moves in. And, we ignore the red flags, the 100,000 red flags moving into that relationship, man. I just ignored them.
I like to joke about that. Like, I used to say, like, red flags for me were like come over here.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, my picker's kind of messed up. And so all the red flags, like all the things that you should be telling you, no, don't come this way, were like the things in my life were like, I'm looking for it.
Yeah. It was insane. And one of those, again, I laugh about it, but at the same time I cringe, like, oh man, why did I? But so that, and man, it's insane. I could write a book just on that year alone. I went from, I was in the heights of my career as just a dental assistant, but I love my job. I love what I do. The boys were living with me. I had custody of them at the time. We were still back and forth in the courts with the divorce thing a little bit. And then I lost my job at the dental office. And it was a choice that I made. I made the decision to do what I did that in the end that got me fired. I was heavily influenced, but, I could have said no, but I didn't. Ended up getting me fired. Then I went from that to waitressing and trying to pay a mortgage and electric bill and stuff. Waitressing just wasn't working.
Yeah.
So here this guy is sitting at the house not working. You know how that goes. And my stuff's getting sold off. Pay bills. Well, then next thing I know, the bank's sending letters because mortgage isn't getting paid. So the house was getting repossessed. I was going to have to move. So in that decision, in that moment, that's when I was like, okay, their dad was hounding me about custody. I was about to have to go live with my sister. It was the only place I had to go. And there wasn't enough room out at her house for me and 3 small kids. I mean, they were 7, 6, and 4 at the time. So I told their dad, I said, okay, you have to come get them. He got full custody. And I remember all I did at that point, was just smoke marijuana. I remember that being the hardest day of my life. I laid in my oldest son's bed crying so much because I felt like I had failed them so bad. Having to just say, hey, I can't take care of you. To go to your dad. And I tried to justify that with like, no, that was a selfless decision of mine. I wasn't going to drag them through the whole, where are we going to live? How are we going to pay for this and that? I wasn't going to do that to those kids when their dad could take good care of them, provide for them, and I couldn't.
Yeah.
So it was that. They were gone. I lost my home. I remember driving away from it for the last time. It still had a bunch of my furniture and things in it. I just couldn't fit in my car. I went out to my sister's house, and all this time I'm clean off of meth. I'm just smoking the weed, staying to myself. The whole instance there, me and the toxic boyfriend fighting, this and that. He was chasing pills and wanting to couch hop, essentially, because he didn't want to live where he lived, was going to have to live. He wanted us to be together, And my sister was like, he can't live at my house.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. So he was wanting to hotel and couch hop. I had never lived like that before, ever. So I'm in this, like, what is this? I'm, upset. I just lost my home, my kids, or whatever, and we're on a couch hop. What? I remember telling him to just completely get out of my life the first time. And I went to my sister's house. I remember driving back to my sister's house. I had my bags or whatever. I fell in her front door, and I looked at her and I said, I want the pain to go away. Make the pain go away. Make it go away. I don't care what it is. Make it go away. And I relapsed again on meth. Then it wasn't very long after that I found the syringe. I started using intravenously.
That's the disease, right? Like,
Yeah.
we look back over our span of our lives, and like we talk about how it is progressive.
Yeah.
The disease of addiction is so progressive. Like, we start doing the things that we thought we would never do.
Oh, yeah.
I used to be that addict. I remember when I started getting high, I would say, I will never do that.
Mm-hmm.
I will never do it that way. I will never go to that place. I will never date that guy. I will never do that. And all of those nevers became eventuallys,
Yeah.
right? Like, I kept telling myself, and until I finally found myself like you, an IV drug user.
Yeah.
And so many times I told myself, like, that'll never happen to me. That's one of the things I talk about when I go to the schools. I always tell the kids, because I was the same as you. I played basketball. I did speech and debate. I was on dance team. I did all of these. I was actually honor society president my freshman year.
Yeah.
And like, I remember, I tell them, I'm like, don't ever say it'll never happen to you, because if you looked at who I was as a young adult, or not even a young adult, but as an adolescent, it all eventually happened.
Yeah. I mean, the pictures don't add up, or they don't match up if you think that because I mean, like you said, like when I was at 4th grade, I got the Presidential Award for Educational Excellence signed by the President Bush at the time,
Right.
and stuff. And I did ballet, church, all that. He said, yeah, I even when it was, I'll never use intravenously. When I did start, it was, well, I will always be clean about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll never be one of those that pulls up, toilet water, this and that.
Right.
No, man.
Yeah. Addiction will take you to those places that you never thought you could be taken to.
It took me straight there.
So you started using IV, and that,
Man, that's
it.
That was it. I tried to stop several times. No, couldn't. It was a year. I'd been using for a year, and then caught 6, 7 felonies from stealing. And even when I caught my felonies, man, I was like, well, at least they weren't drug charges. I mean, come on. Like, there was so many times I want to just like go back in time and be like,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
Stop it. Oh my gosh, it was insane.
Let me ask you this. So even whenever you caught those felony charges, because did you go on probation after you caught those?
5 years.
So were they drug testing you?
Yeah.
So were you passing them?
No.
Was it ever in that moment, whenever you were not passing those, did they offer you or mandate you to treatment?
So I was in Batesville. All right, Batesville.
Oh, Batesville.
Living in Batesville at the time. And they would give me a meeting sheet, go to meetings. But the meetings in Batesville, NA and AA is together, same building, one building, and it's like a couple nights a week, maybe 3 nights a week.
For the listeners who don't know anything about Batesville, Batesville is another one of those places in Arkansas that is very rural, very small town. It's primarily farmland or mountains, and it lacks resources. But at one time, Batesville was also like the meth capital of the world. Like, not even joking, right? Like, if you were selling meth or getting meth or using meth, it was probably coming from Batesville.
Right.
I talk about this so much, Teela, about how the power of peer support and the power of lived experience, how there should be somebody who is a certified peer in all of these different landscapes.
Yeah.
Like from district courts to circuit court to felony to misdemeanor. Because how different your life could have been had there been somebody who was like, hey, like, I've been with through what you're going through, and let me try to show you something different.
Right.
Not only that, we're looking at a time right now in Arkansas, and I don't like political things, right? But like where our government wants to build more prisons to house more people, and that is never going to fix the problem,
No.
right? Like we cannot incarcerate ourselves out of a public health crisis.
Yeah. It's just not. That's not going to work.
It's never going to work. It's never going to work. Like we have to be able to provide the resources that these people need. And if anything alone, just to plant the seed, right? Like to say, hey, here is this treatment center. These are the places that you could call. You don't hand somebody who has never, ever experienced 12-step fellowship a meeting sheet and be like, here, good luck.
Yeah. Yeah. I had no idea. I did go to a couple of meetings, and no, I went to one. I can't lie. I went to one meeting, and it was everybody sitting around a table. They were smoking inside, so everybody was smoking cigarettes because they let you smoke in the building, and it was them telling war stories. That was it. It was just, oh, well, there was this one time that and I didn't get I was like, what is this? This is all that this is? And I was like,
I
I'm
can
not
do this
interested.
at home.
Yeah.
I can go do this at the hotel.
I mean, for
While I'm
real.
getting high.
Exactly. I can, laugh about it, be like, yeah, whatever. But it was, I didn't go back after that. And I will say, though, it was a dream of mine, and due to current circumstances, I've kind of had to let that dream go. But I wanted to take Little Rock Recovery back to Batesville.
Yeah.
I wanted to find a church or somebody that I could talk to and be like, hey, can we use a room nightly? I'll help pay, whatever, the light bill be kind of, and set up something that's daily. You need something every day there.
Absolutely.
And some people, I mean, of course, they have the Celebrate Recovery, which is great in Batesville. It's Friday nights, though. But again, addicts, some of us are a little scared of religion.
Yeah.
Or we don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah. Listen, it took me years, right? Like, I mean, my grandfather was a Southern Baptist preacher. Religion is something that is very, in my dad's side of the family, like, they're very religious people. When I found the rooms of recovery and when I finally decided to surrender, to a different way of life, I had a lot of resentments towards God. Obviously they were foolish, that because it's my own doing, but I had a lot of resentments. And religion at the time was not something that I was seeking. I had sought religion before as a kid and it didn't work. And it's not until now, I have a little over 8 years that religion and God is really at the forefront of my recovery now, but it took me a while to get there. Yeah. It took me a while to be able to see, how big of an impact it can make on my life. So from that point forward, when was it that you finally found recovery?
So, when I found the recovery that stuck, so we can fast forward to 2022, and my probation officer had just had enough with me because, and I think my probation officer to begin with didn't really help me out, and there are those,
yeah,
that
absolutely,
he didn't really help me out, and I know it was. Go in for my report. All right, so have you been using any illegal substances? In my head, for some reason, I thought marijuana wasn't as bad as meth.
yeah.
So I would verbally, be like, well, hey, listen, I smoked a joint, or whatever. And most of the time it was, all right, well, I'm not gonna write it down this time, whatever, but next time you're gonna pee in a cup, kind of thing. And that was every time, though.
So many, and you look at that, and all I'm hearing is missed opportunities.
Yeah.
So many different times, like that was a missed opportunity. Number one, on the probation officer's fault. You know what I mean? That's a missed opportunity. We're he should have been drug testing you every time. I used to do the same thing. Even with my parents, we as addicts, we know how to trick the system.
You
know what I mean?
Trust
I'm just
me.
smoking weed, and my parents would be like, okay, no, I am gone. You know what I mean? I am literally gone all the way. But let's be realistic. Probation parole officers in the state of Arkansas, I can't speak for across the nation. I'm sure it's the same no matter where you go. Their caseloads are maxed out.
Yeah.
Maxed out. And so when you have a person who is not being paid properly, right? They're not receiving the compensation for the actual jobs that they're doing, they're going to lack empathy. They're going to lack compassion. They're going to lack care.
Yeah.
Because you can only do so much for so many different people. And if addiction is a public health crisis like it is in Arkansas, like it is, if it's the same everywhere,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
going to get the same results.
Yeah. And I learned how to manipulate that system real quick. First of all, I had male probation officers. Well, in part of my addiction and what was so dangerous about how I felt like my addiction was very dangerous to me was I was such a chameleon.
Yeah.
You didn't know. I kept a professional appearance. When I'm walking into a probation office in full scrubs, ready to, because, and I wanted to appear professional.
Right.
And everything. I kept work and the drug life so separate, and to where neither one had any idea that the other existed. And when I learned to manipulate the probation system, like hey, well, I work a full-time job. I can't just take off. Can we do my reports when I get off work? Okay, yeah, fine, Danny, wonderful. I know all the female officers left at 4. Mine were scheduled at 5.
Yeah.
Can't test me if there's not a female officer. Ha, ha, ha. Well, then I got a female officer.
Yeah.
And that lady, it's actually funny. I was thinking about this the other day when I went to rehab, and after the little 10-day blackout period and I could make my first phone call, I called her. And was like, I wanted to say thank you. I know this is just 10 days in, but I really want to say thank you. Because
For caring.
yeah, she looked me in the face and she said, no, you got 40 points. And she said, you can either do SIS for a year or you can go to inpatient treatment. And in my head, I'm fighting inpatient treatment. No, I've got a job. I'll lose my job. I've got to pay child support. I've got a car payment. I can't do that. I can't take that time. She said, well, you need to pick something now. And because it's one or the other.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I will look for inpatient treatment.
So you went to inpatient in 22?
Mm-hmm.
So what's your clean date, Teela?
9/16/22.
Woo woo.
Yeah. I remember thugging it out in that parking lot, saying I was only going to stay for 10 days. And then they told me I had to seek treatment. They didn't say how long I had to seek it for, and kind of thing. And I'm just going to show up here, say I did it, and then go back to do whatever I was doing. But something clicked in there, and here I am 2 hours away from the place I called home for 16 years of my life. And here I am in 2 hours away deciding, no, I'm not going to go back. I can't. I'm going to stay here. So with $10 to my name, my car, and what was in my car, I went to Kim Free. I chose to go to Kim Free instead of going home.
And that's a game changer, man. I don't think people understand, especially if you're listening to the podcast right now and you are one of those individuals who are really like on that teeter of like, what do I do in my life? Do I go to treatment? What does that look like? Because I went to recovery housing as well. It is a game changer. We are so defiant as people, in recovery, like to want to do the continuum of care, right? Like we want to just do the 30 days and go on about our lives. But let's be so realistic right now. 30 days is not long enough. I don't care who you are. If you are able to use 30 days and go on, you're very rare.
Yeah.
Right? Like we need accountability. We need structure. We need that support system.
Yeah.
We need that constant everyday maintenance, and so if that's you listening today, I definitely encourage you, if you are wondering what you should do, what next step in your recovery you should take a chance, man. Go to sober living. Let it change your life. I'm also a firm believer that we can get clean anywhere we are. We just have to have the want to do it.
Right.
I mean, like it doesn't matter. People like try to seek out like these fancy sober living homes, or no, man, like just go be around other women or other men, if you're a man listening, and allow these people to love on you until you can love yourself.
Yeah.
So that's where we met. I remember, and we were talking to Ty about that before you came in. I met you with barely 30 days under your belt. You were a hot mess.
Yeah. Don't ever change your lock code to your phone before you go into rehab. You're not going to remember it afterwards.
And I'll never forget, like, it's been really an honor watching your journey, because even in those early moments, you talk about the manipulation, you would try to talk yourself out of all, like you would give suggestions and you would say, but, so to see who you are today is leaps and bounds. So how long were you in recovery housing for?
I got out October 6th of 22, And I lived in the chem-free until January of 23.
Why'd you leave sober living, Teela?
Okay, listen, it's because I got married.
Yeah. So Teela does the one thing that we tell people never to do.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget the day that I got on Facebook and these little sneaky sneakersons had met in sober living and went off and got married.
Yeah.
But really, that has been, you guys have been together ever since. You guys are a diamond in the rough because it doesn't happen too often.
It's always I have to give that disclaimer when I go tell my story at Natural State. I have to be like, now listen, the suggestion is don't do what I did, okay? Because let me tell you, some people at work, it's rare that it works. It's very rare that it does work. And I have to give that, you have to be prepared that, number one, you're in early recovery, so you have no idea who you even are yet.
Absolutely.
Because I don't care how much you are in how much recovery knowledge you have. You don't know who you are yet. You're not going to figure that out for a while.
Yeah.
So you have to be prepared to not only be healing yourself, but you have to take on theirs as well, because they don't know who they are and they're healing too. So yeah, there's been challenging moments where we have to really be like, okay, wait, that's my insecurity coming out, and we talk through it. And that is our thing, is we communicate through those wounds.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to communicate with our sponsors first and then with each other, but it works. It works for us. It's both of us, we come from families that, we're in active addiction, and that's all we ever knew them for. But we wanted this bad enough. We want it bad enough, and we're going to keep fighting for it.
Yeah. I talk a lot about Teela, and how she is one of the strongest women I have ever met. So Teela, while in recovery, has had to go through some things that I don't, that number one, it doesn't matter if you're in recovery, not recovery, what your life looks like, that have been some of the hardest battles of her life. And Teela got a diagnosis, right?
Yeah, the June of 2023. So I have to rewind for a second, because I have to give a shout out, or like the continuing care thing. Okay.
Absolutely.
When you're taught, about addiction and all the fundamental things of it while you're in inpatient treatment. And then when you're in outpatient treatment, you're learning, your character defects, all of the things. And then you're also learning how to take care of yourself. And one of the counselors at the IOP, one of her assignments to everybody was to make a doctor's appointment, just a checkup.
I remember that.
Yeah, just to make a checkup. And, you don't have to come back and tell them like what they found or anything. Just come back and let her know you went to it. Show her that you went, get a doctor's note saying you went.
Let's be realistic, right? Like whenever we are in our active addiction, we do not take care of ourselves. No. Like that was one of the biggest things, like that whole first year of my recovery, that I had to take care of. Like I had super bad dental problems, right? Like from domestic violence and from drug use. I don't know when the last time, or if I had even ever been to a wellness visit, right? Like, cause if you look at, you're supposed to go to this wellness visit once a year. I don't think in my whole adult life I ever even had a wellness visit. Yeah. The only time that I ever went to the doctor was when I was sick or when I was pregnant. Yep. And then when I was pregnant, I barely went then because I was using for, 2 of my pregnancies. So it wasn't until I was having those children that like I went to the hospital because I had to have C-sections. Like we don't do these things, we don't take care of ourselves. Yeah. So that is something too. If you are in recovery, if you listen to anything we say today, take care of yourself. Yeah. Go to these wellness visits, get the things done, because, we could do a lot of damage to our lives knowingly and unknowingly while we're in active addiction, or there could be underlying health issues that we don't even know about. Right. Because we were in active addiction and we weren't taking care of it.
Yeah, and symptoms are masked, and it takes your body it takes getting clean, your body bouncing back from that to start showing you, hey, what's not working.
Yeah.
But I made the wellness checkup, and I'd had a couple of symptoms going on that I mentioned, so they wanted to do, the women's annual checkup, and that came back abnormal. And so that's when I got referred to a women's doctor, gynecologist, and found out that I had stage 3, advanced stage 3, which is 3C cervical cancer. And it had already spread into my pelvic lymph nodes. So that was kind of a slap in the face, and I was mad at God. First thing I will say is I was mad at God for quite a while after that, because in my eyes, here I am just putting all this work to get clean, and just to get cancer. What?
Yeah.
Um, that was a shocker. A lot of feelings came with that, because in my head, my first thought was, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna lose my hair. Like, what in the world?" But
Well, we're women.
yeah,
You know?
at the doctors, they were like, "Well, we're gonna do, radiation, a little bit of chemo. You won't lose your hair." This, that. I was, okay, so maybe this won't be that bad. I remember I did radiation, a lot of pelvic radiation. I was working at UAMS at the time, and still working full time. I would go in 7 o'clock in the morning, get radiation treatment, and then walk across campus, clock in, and work. After a while, the radiation kind of started catching up with me, and I had to take a month off to do internal radiation, which in the women's world, that's very invasive, kind of degrading, and it's not fun at all. The side effects was the only thing they could describe it, only way that they could describe it was, it's like having the worst sunburn of your life on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
So urinating, everything was just excruciating. I went back to work after that. We thought we were, advanced. We thought we were, taking care of everything. I rung the bells, did a PET scan. No, it had moved up. A new lymph node had popped up. Did a little bit more radiation. Still very positive about it. Another scan. Nope. Moved up again. Well, this time the radiation oncologist, he said, "I can't. You've maxed out on radiation." And he said, "I can't radiate that area." He said, "I can, but it will throw you into kidney failure." Of course, I'm like, how long before the kidney failure actually, how long are we talking here? He's like, "Well, a couple of years." I'm like, "Oh, okay, never mind. I thought it was going to be like later on." And that's when they say, "Well, we think it's time you're going to have to do the harsh chemo now." And I said, "Okay, now I'm going to lose my hair." Great. That one was really hard, because at that time I had just got my visitations back with my kids.
Yeah.
And that was, I was like, okay, here I'm going to have to, that was, when I tell you having to put on a strong face, that one's the hardest, is having to look at your kids every day and, trying to be strong for them. And of course, my oldest, he worries about me all the time, and I've told him time and time again, as long as you see Mama going to work, Mama's fine, okay? I am defined by my work ethic. That's just who I've always been.
Yeah.
I'm a workaholic, too. Well, the boys got to shave my head, and we went through the summer of trying to make the best of everything. I was very, very sick, still working full time. There were mornings that I would drive to work with my little barf bags and sitting there just driving through Sherwood, throwing up, and I'm just don't mind me, at the traffic. There was times where I'd be at work, in and out of the bathroom. Then I started having kidney issues, and later on that year ended up with a nephrostomy tube. I was against that because I'm like, listen, I don't want the accessory attachments. Come on now. Well, that had happened. Still working full time, even with this tube that runs out of my kidney into a bag down my leg. Hospitalized weeks at a time for an infection or for, my kidney swelling, going to work as soon as I get out.
Yeah.
My husband, though, my husband's a real MVP there, dude. And I'll cry.
Okay.
If I start talking about. how hard that man works.
So for you guys who don't know, Teela is just an added little bonus to my life because I've known her husband, Josh, for probably 15, 16 years, if not more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that man, he is been my rock solid. He takes care of me in ways that, like, how a husband should.
Yeah. Right.
And
For better, for worse.
I know that if he could, he would take it away anytime. Like, he has expressed that. But he's a lot of the reason that I've gotten this far, is how he's taken care of me. He's watched me go through the treatments and the mood swings and the, the emotional of everything. But there were times where I was sitting in the hospital bed doing my step work, trying to maintain my recovery as best I could. Because my recovery did go on the back burner there for a minute. And I was, I'm still clean. Still clean, was just not going to as many meetings, sick and stuff.
Yeah.
But still calling people, still checking in.
Yeah,
and
you do.
Yeah, like, all of that. But it wasn't until the last scan, 2 years of fighting this, and then in June of 2025, basically getting told there's no other options. It's moved into my bones, more lymph nodes, near my spine have lit up, and there's not a chemo available in Arkansas anyway that is going to help. So we decided to stop treatment, and that was hard because I felt like I was not giving up on my kids, but giving up. But when the doctor said, in these situations, survival rates less than 6 months, I literally thought he was going to say 6 years. So I was smiling at the time. And then he said 6 months, and my face just dropped. Like, you mean to tell me I could be dead by Christmas? What? No. And that hit me hard. And I was a wreck for first couple of months. Having to break that to my kids because, like you said before, we're their mom. No matter how shitty we were to them in the beginning, it doesn't matter. We're still their mom.
Absolutely.
And their faces, that's just a look I'll never forget.
Teela, I want you to know, though, you're a fighter, man. And I don't want you to ever doubt the woman and the mother that you have become today. Like, the majority of the time that you have been in recovery, you have been fighting this.
Yeah.
And you show up every day. I know I really wanted to yell at you the other day when I found out you left the hospital, but you had a football game to make it.
Yeah.
And you did that no matter what. The one thing, no matter what you have been through, because these are all relapsable things. You know what I mean? Like, I think I shared that with you not too long ago. Like, I don't know. I can't tell you, I can't, like, how my mind space would be if I would have received the same diagnosis, or so many other people, but you continue to fight.
Yeah. And whenever I do go and share my story at the rehab and that part comes up, that's when my biggest thing is you have to want this, and I can't express the level of want, but it has to be a burning desire that no matter what gets thrown in your face, you're not going to pick up another drug. You're not
No matter
going to
what.
pick up. You're not going to throw it away, no matter what.
Yeah.
And I made a promise to my kids, and I made a promise to myself.
Absolutely.
And to me, in my head, I'm like, I'm not going to throw away, over 1,000 days clean. And just because I'm upset over a diagnosis that I can't change, I can't take it away. All I can do is really just change my mindset. So, yeah, mainly after the skydiving thing.
That's right. Yeah. So Teela got to go skydiving.
Yeah.
Amazing experience.
That was so awesome. That was one of the things I know beforehand. I was never going to go skydiving. You couldn't talk me into it. And then now I was just like, you know what? What the hell? Let's do it. And literally them jumping out and they're like, chin back, legs out. I'm like, okay, a Pocahontas jump. So that's what I felt like was Pocahontas jumping off that cliff. And that was an amazing experience in itself. And it was after that, now I've changed my mindset to I'm recovering from chemo now since we stopped it, because it wore me out and I felt like it was going to take me out faster.
Yeah.
So now, I mean, that was 3 months ago, and here I am. I'm still working full time, still going. And in my head, I'm like, I feel too good now for Christmas to be my expiration date. I just don't feel like that's happening.
You live every day, and really in life in general, like none of us really ever know when the next day is going to be our last, right? So we just keep living, and you live every day with gratitude, and you live every day with grace and with strength and with hope for the future.
Yeah.
There's something that I ask everybody that comes on the podcast, and I don't like to prep them, so I like to be as authentic and original as they can be. What is your message to the world? That if you could leave here one day that you want the listeners to know, what is that?
My message to the world. This is a podcast targeting women, directed to women. And it's something that I said to somebody not too long ago, is as women, especially women, if you're getting into early recovery, our primary goal needs to be to become 100% self-sufficient in life, to the point where nobody can look you in the face and say you wouldn't have that if it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And my message to any addict out there is, this is the life over here on this side's beautiful. When you're sitting in the bathroom floor crying, begging yourself to not get high, but doing it anyway because you don't know how to not to. Yeah. We're over here waiting to love you.
Absolutely.
And you will be loved.
100%. Teela, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
It was great. Like as long as we've known each other, I've never actually been able to hear your story. So thank you for that. Thank you for showing the courage to come and speak about some really hard, difficult things and some truths that are in your life. If you're listening to this podcast today, we started a GoFundMe for Teela. When was it? Probably 4 or 5 months ago. I asked Teela as her friend, can I start this GoFundMe for her to help offset the costs for medical expenses? Because let's be realistic, there are days that Teela's not able to get out of bed and she's not able to do things. But not only that, we don't know how long Teela will be with us. I hope it's for eternity. I hope it's forever. But we want to help her create some memories with her babies with the time that she has. I'm going to reopen the GoFundMe. It'll be posted in the bio to this podcast. If you feel compelled to donate, please do so. Share it with your friends, your coworkers, your family members. And let's help Teela make some more memories with her babies. We are women, right? Right. We stand together in solidarity as women. And so let's try to make that happen for Teela. We thank you guys so much for listening today. We are streaming on all major platforms. If you are not subscribe today to Long Term, a podcast in recovery. You can find it on YouTube. I work with Ty King, and that's where all our podcasts go. You can find us on Spotify. We're working on Apple. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Hey, thank you. I got sweat right here.
My feet are sleeping. I got to let them wake up first. I did.
Oh, you did amazing, Frank.
Thank you.
I love you so much.
I'm surprised. I watched my mouth.
I know, yeah. So me too. You know me.
Yeah.
You know my cousin. I love you so much.
No, thanks. Can I pray with you, look us? Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, Lord. We thank you for the many blessings that you continue to work into our lives, Lord. I'm asking in the name of Jesus, Lord, that you put your hands on Teela, Lord, that you continue to help her heal and you help her find comfort no matter what is going on, Lord, and you continue to give her the strength to walk each and every day, Lord, with the grace that she's already been walking in, Lord. We thank you for all the blessings that you've given us. We thank you for the blessings of recovery, for the ability for her to be a mother again, Lord. We just ask that you continue to give her guidance and you give her strength through each and every day. These things we ask in your holy and precious name. I love you.
I love you.